Along the frigid coastline of Lab Phase 8, none other than Admiral Borsellino, better known as Kizaru, arrived, shivering as he commented on the cold. This place was nothing like Punk Hazard's scorching chaos. Vegapunk stood nearby, beaming with excitement. "This is where I'll rebuild the future of humanity," he declared proudly. But Kizaru, unimpressed, fired back. "You've been here for ages and still get lost trying to find the bathroom." He pulled up a Dindin Mushi screen, revealing something Vegapunk wasn't ready to see. The world government had been spying on him the entire time. Every conversation, every whisper, all recorded, including his secret communications with pirates. Vegapunk groaned. He hated when Kizaru came bearing bad news. The Admiral simply shrugged. "Just doing my job." And he wasn't alone. Outside, a full-blown military force was stationed, including Sentomaru. Then came a transmission from one of the 5 elders, St. J. Garcia Saturn himself. He acknowledged that Egghead might be the ideal base for the Pacifista project, but he had concerns. Kuma, after all, was still classified as a pirate, with a bounty of 296 million berries, not exactly a government poster boy. Vegapunk tried to argue. If this worked, it could save countless lives. Saturn agreed. "Sure, if it works, we'll achieve unprecedented power through science." But then came the real catch: 3 brutal conditions. First, Kuma would need to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Apparently, a rookie named Portgas D. Ace had just defeated one of the current warlords, leaving an opening. Second, Kuma had to allow himself to be converted into a full-fledged human weapon, complete cyborg transformation. And third, the most terrifying clause of all, because of his revolutionary army ties, the government couldn't risk Kuma turning that power back on them. So, he would have to surrender his free will. No more thoughts, no more agency, just a government-controlled machine, a human drone. Vegapunk was horrified. "That's not surgery," he said, trembling. "That's execution." Could they really ask him to turn this man, a former pastor, into a soulless killer? But Saturn was cold. Scientists don't question orders, they follow them. Those were the conditions, if they wanted to save a criminal's daughter. And while this heartless negotiation unfolded, young Bonnie was happily skipping through the lab, clueless. She believed she was about to be cured. Vegapunk, meanwhile, muttered to himself, "This isn't science, it's cold-blooded murder." But there was no way out. If they refused, the army camped outside would storm the lab and take Kuma by force. Kuma made his choice. "Do it," he said. He had expected Saturn to demand something monstrous, but if his life was the price to save Bonnie, he'd pay it without hesitation. Even Kizaru and Vegapunk struggled to hide their emotions. Meanwhile, Bonnie was playing tag with a massive lab guard, giggling as she darted between his legs. She had no idea her world was being rewritten behind closed doors. Saturn then asked how long both treatments would take. Vegapunk estimated curing the sapphire scale disease would take 6 months, followed by a year of recovery before Bonnie could safely be in sunlight again, so around a year and a half total. As for Kuma's modifications, at least 2 years. Kuma breathed a small sigh of relief. Bonnie would recover before her 10th birthday, but Saturn wasn't done. He reminded Kuma, "Your daughter is a hostage. Once she's cured, your leash gets pulled. The world government takes full custody. She only walks free after you give up your will, and even then you'll never see her again." That was the dagger. Kuma begged for one final request, that Bonnie never learn the truth. Not about her condition, or that she was being used as a bargaining chip. Instead of locking her in some government prison, he asked that she be allowed to rest and recover at the church in the Sorbet Kingdom, the place she called home. In a rare moment of mercy, Saturn agreed. As long as she's being monitored, she can stay wherever. With a heavy heart, Kuma stepped out of the lab and made his way to Bonnie. Sentomaru tried to speak with Kizaru, but the Admiral brushed him off like an ignored message. Kuma informed them they'd be staying at the lab for 6 months. Bonnie lit up with excitement, thrilled her father would be by her side. Kuma, ever the protector, asked Sentomaru to look after her when he was gone. Meanwhile, Vegapunk buried himself in his work. He was designing the ultimate weapon, but couldn't keep up with the sheer volume of ideas. He needed help, someone to eat, sleep, and function for him while he worked. That's when he came up with the concept that would define his legacy, the birth of his satellite bodies. Multiple versions of himself, each managing a part of his genius. The Vegapunk satellites were born. Funny how the one who eventually betrayed them, the one Vegapunk created just to eat and poop, ended up playing such a central role in this chapter of Kuma's life. Meanwhile, Bonnie was already being prepped for surgery, and right after, she was up and about, pestering the adorably stoic lab assistant to come play with her. With those puppy dog eyes, he didn't stand a chance and gave in. Kuma, on the other hand, was enduring the grueling agony of his transformation into a cyborg. Every session was torture, and yet, when he looked up, there she was, Bonnie riding Sentomaru like a horse. For a second, Kuma wanted to join in the fun, but a single glare from the hefty bodyguard snapped him back to reality. Later, Bonnie sat beside him, covered in dirt, proudly drawing something for her dad. Kuma promised to cherish it forever. Vegapunk, watching the two, couldn't help but crack up. Bonnie had already become the lab's little sunshine, making friends with everyone. One time, she left her exam room absolutely starving, following a delicious scent all the way to the kitchen, where she found Kuma and Sentomaru hard at work making a mozzarella and pepperoni pizza. Even Kizaru dropped by to join the feast. As the meal came together, Bonnie and Kuma broke into the Nika dance with unfiltered joy. Vegapunk jumped in too, laughing like a child. Even Sentomaru, grumpy as ever, got dragged into the dance party by Kizaru, Uncle Mode fully activated. The lab was filled with laughter, warmth, and pure celebration. 6 months later, Vegapunk delivered good news. Bonnie was doing great. Just one more year and she'd be fully healed. She asked him if she could come visit again once she was better, and the old genius lit up like a star, beaming, "Of course you can!" Resting in a barrel, Bonnie told Kuma she really wanted to see the world. Kuma smiled gently and told her she'd see it all soon enough. Together, they returned to the Sorbet Kingdom. The people welcomed them with open arms. Bonnie was ecstatic, telling everyone she'd be fully healed in just a year and finally able to leave the house. Miraculously, Old Lady Connie was still alive, promising to look after Bonnie with care. Kuma gently explained to Bonnie that he was now a pirate and wouldn't be returning for at least a year, but he promised to send her lots of letters in the meantime. Bonnie declared she wanted to travel with her daddy when she got better. Kuma smiled. He wanted that more than anything. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was the last time he'd ever see her. An agent from CP8 named Alpha was assigned to stay with Bonnie during her recovery, per medical orders. Honestly, if being sick meant getting an agent like her, it might not be so bad. Alpha introduced herself with a calm yet frightening expression, unintentionally scaring poor Bonnie. Worse yet, a surveillance base was being built next to the church just to monitor her. Alpha, cold and direct, warned Kuma. The kid's neck cracks real easy, you know. Kuma met her gaze without flinching. "I know," he replied, "and I'm never coming back to see her again." He walked over to Bonnie, thanked her for being born, and whispered goodbye. To the others, he assured them not to worry about her, but behind his calm voice, he was barely holding it together, knowing this would be the final time he'd look into his daughter's eyes. And so, the world called him a tyrant, but in truth, Kuma became as obedient as a golden retriever, faithfully serving the world government. Soon, he was officially named one of the 7 warlords of the sea, the Shichibukai. Word of his appointment spread fast. Doflamingo sneered, remarking that another heavy hitter had joined the ranks. Crocodile and Nico Robin were busy plotting the takeover of Alabasta. Mihawk was out there casually destroying ships, and even Elva compared his size to Whitebeard, asking Kobe who was stronger. The boy, nervous and honest, declared, "She's the strongest in the world." Ace was cracking jokes with Jinbei, laughing that they'd found a replacement already. Jinbei pointed out it wouldn't have been a problem if Ace hadn't taken down Hanafuda, Uda's father. Even that traitor Teach was still in the crew back then. In Amazon Lily, Boa Hancock couldn't care less about the new warlord. She had no intention of getting involved, but Gloriosa warned her. Even the Serpent Princess needs to know about these kinds of things. In Thriller Bark, Gecko Moria was cracking jokes about the newly appointed Shichibukai who apparently wielded the pawpaw fruit. Meanwhile, the Revolutionary Army was in disbelief. Kuma, one of their strongest, had joined the very institution they'd vowed to destroy. It didn't make sense. But Kuma had a purpose. He flew a pirate flag embroidered with the same design Bonnie had once drawn for him. He sent her letters frequently, letting her know he was doing well and had become pretty famous. He reminded her that when she turned 10, they'd travel the world together. Far away, a young boy named Luffy still wasn't even a pirate. But in the forest, he was already beating up wild tigers, preparing for the life ahead. Kuma, now stationed in East Blue, was ready to carry out his orders for the world government. In the next episode, Bonnie will be eagerly waiting to read more of her father's letters, but for some reason, not a single one has arrived. Now healed and more determined than ever, she's ready to set out on a journey, one that might finally lead her to her father. We've finally come to the end of this one. We know you guys will be excited for the next one. It is coming soon. Until then, stay tuned.